Hello everyone and welcome back. We are going to be doing something a little different today. One of my favorite booktubers is Noelle Gallagher, and sadly she no longer makes booktube content, but I was watching some of her old videos and I came across her Cupid book tag, and I just miss that era of YouTube, of booktube that was always doing some sort of tag or fun themed book recommendations videos. So for the season of Valentine's, I decided to kind of make my own, where I give you recommendations based on the vibe of your favorite Valentine's candy. Purely subjective, all my own opinions, and I've got a couple recommendations for each. So let's start with a classic. Conversation hearts, or the little sweethearts. Everyone will recognize these. They were the first thing I thought of when I came up with this video idea. They've got fun words and phrases printed on them, so if these are your favorite, then I think you would like a banter-heavy romance or a very character-driven story. So first, I would recommend to you The House in the Cerulean Sea. First of all, the cover, exactly the colorful pastel vibes that the Conversation Sweethearts are giving. This is a queer young adult romance about Linus, a very strict rule-following caseworker who travels to an orphanage on a remote island to check up on 6 kids with dangerous magical powers. And through this assignment, he learns to open up, he learns the value of not always following the rules, and of accepting who you are, the importance of taking up space. This is a very cozy read, very upbeat and filled with love, and a great cast of characters, with one of the best found family tropes I've ever read. Speaking of found family, I would also recommend to you The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune. This is a queer sci-fi road trip romance set in 1995. We follow Nate, a journalist who is visiting his parents' cabin in the woods after they have just passed away, when he finds Alex, a rugged veteran, and a young girl named Art with impossible powers. Both are fugitives on the run from the government, just trying to get Art home, and together all 3 of them have to sort of go on a road trip together to help her, and along the way, Nate and Alex fall in love while trying not to die. The entire time I read this, it reminded me of that old Disney Channel movie with Dwayne Johnson. I think it was called Escape to Witch Mountain, if you know what I'm talking about. So this also has a very nostalgic feel, like the candy hearts. Do you see where we're going with this? However, if you like the gummy bears best, you weirdo, then I think you would like something a little more out of the box. Something fun. Something unserious, and so first I would recommend to you the River of Time series. I have never seen anyone talk about this series, and that is a crime. In this, Gabby, our teenage protagonist, is on vacation in Italy. Her parents are archaeologists, so while they are busy on a dig, she goes wandering around and accidentally stumbles upon an ancient tomb that transports her to the 14th century in the middle of a battlefield. We've got men who have never seen women in pants before. We've got hot Italian princes in full armor. We've got an arranged marriage, a plague, and No Way Home. This is just a very silly, not taking itself too seriously kind of time travel romance. So if you like gummy bears, I think you would like this series. I also think you would like Texas Gothic. This is a quirky kind of paranormal romance with cute neighbor cowboys. Amy Goodnight comes from a paranormally inclined family, and while on summer vacation, she has been tasked with taking care of her aunt's ranch in Texas. But all of her hopes of having a non-eventful summer are crushed when a ghost on the ranch makes itself known and needs Amy's help being put to rest. This is not meant to be a super creepy or complicated read. This is a simple, predictable, good old-fashioned murder mystery. Think Nancy Drew or Scooby-Doo vibes, where like you can probably guess who did it way before it is ever revealed, but that's okay because that's not the point. It's about the journey and the hijinks that we get into along the way. Also, the first line in this book is, "The goat was in the tree again," if that helps to convince you further. But maybe you don't want to read something out of the box. Maybe you want to read something that is well and widely loved, just like M&Ms. They're colorful, they're delicious, everyone loves them, you can't go wrong. And so first I'm going to recommend to you, I know, I'm not going to go on and on about this. Everyone and their mother, their sister, their aunts and uncles, everyone has already read this, but just in case you haven't, this follows Feyre, a 19-year-old girl, the sole provider for her family, who is dragged away to an unknown Fae territory to live out the rest of her mortal life as penance for the Fae life that she took. The longer she's there, the more she realizes things are not what they seem, and she must once again put herself in a position to sacrifice everything in order to save and protect those that she loves. This is one of the most well-known romanticies out there, and for a good reason. This was my first foray into the romantasy genre like 6 or 7 years ago, and I reread it every year. On the flip side, in the world of modern contemporary romances, I would recommend Girl Gone Viral. Katrina King is a camera-shy ex-model who goes viral after being recorded having a meet-cute that wasn't really a meet-cute, and now she's being shoved into the spotlight again. Desperate to escape the attention, she runs to her very hot bodyguard and best friend Jazz, who whisks her away to his family's farmhouse to lie low until everything blows over and romance ensues. We've got a bodyguard love interest, a quiet FMC, they're also best friends, they've known each other for a long time. She's traumatized, he comforts her. I think there's a lot to enjoy about this, and I think that there are bits and pieces of this story that will appeal to everyone. Now, Hershey Kisses, these are deceptive, okay? I think a lot of people think they're boring because they're just a hunk of plain chocolate, but the real intrigue comes in the fucking wrapper. Why do they wrap them like that? I don't think I have ever been able to unwrap a Hershey's Kiss without mangling the fucking foil it comes in. If these are your favorite candy, then I think you would like something sweet and simple, but with a twist. And so I have chosen the Stars Never Rise duology. Nina is 16 at the start of this, and her town's population has been decimated by soul-sucking demons. She is just doing her best to keep her and her sister alive. But when secrets come to light and threaten her and her sister, in order to keep them both alive, she's gonna need help. Enter Finn. Finn is an exorcist and a fugitive with striking green eyes who is not what he seems. This is a paranormal dystopian romance, and listen, the concept of a character having to save the world from monstrous creatures and falling in love along the way is not a new concept by any means, but I found the world building and the lore behind the demon creatures to be really interesting, and part of figuring out how to defeat them is figuring out where they come from and how they're made, and my mind was boggled when we finally figured it out. I have not read anything else quite like this, and so whenever I think of a unique romance, this one always pops into mind. But maybe that sounds too stressful. Maybe that sounds too intense and you don't want to read a plot-heavy book with a character versus the world dynamic. I understand. With much lower stakes, I would recommend Ice Planet Barbarian. Hear me out. This book went viral on TikTok in 2020 for how ridiculous it seems, and so I decided to give it a try, and unironically, I really like this. This is an alien romance, so we've got our female lead who crash lands on a mysterious planet where she meets Vectel. He's like 7 foot, he's blue, he's got 3 toes and a ribbed tongue, and he wants nothing but to pleasure, protect, and provide for Georgie, our female lead, who he cannot understand because they do not speak the same language. And so through this language barrier, Georgie has to convince Vectel to follow her back to her ship so that they can rescue the other women that she crashed with. This is so fun, so spicy, and again, just a romance that isn't taking itself too seriously, and Vectel, despite how scary he might sound, is really just a cinnamon roll. And if you do read this and like this and want more of it, don't worry. There's like 40 other books in this world, all interconnected series and standalones. Candy necklaces or bracelets or G-strings, bikini tops, they have those now. Who are you eating those off of, by the way? I need to know. To me, these are mischievous. They are raunchy and screaming for a smutty, cheeky romance, and so first I have picked The Hating Game. This is a banter-heavy, enemies to lovers, office adversary romance. Yes, this has also been adapted into a movie, which actually wasn't half bad. This is all about the back and forth. This is all about the tension. Our 2 main characters work at a publishing house and they are both competing for a promotion, and so They are upping the antics and they are putting in more hours than ever, spending a bunch of time together until eventually the passion boils over. She wears bright, colorful clothes. He wears ironed gray suits. She's very quirky and personable, and he is very uptight and grumpy. It is just a tried and true dynamic that works. I also offer you A Girl Like Her. This is by Talia Hibbert, who also wrote the Get a Life Chloe Brown series, which was really popular a few years ago. And while I did like that one, I just found this one to be a little bit more compelling. We've got a Black, plus-size, nerdy, autistic female lead who is perfectly fine with being the town's outcast until an ex-military man moves in next door and starts bringing her home-cooked meals to try and win her over. But she's been hurt before and is determined not to let her guard down. She's very human to read, which I know sounds weird, but it truly felt like I could just reach through the pages and hug her while reading this. And Evan, our male lead, is just so perfectly fit for her. He understands her in a way that no one else even can or has ever even bothered to try, and their spicy scenes are oh so good, oh so worth it. Next up, if you like boxed chocolates, then I think you like variety, and I think you like options, so I'm going to recommend the Aspect and Anchor series. This is another series of interconnected standalones. The second one, Sworn to the Shadow God, is my personal favorite, but I would recommend reading the first one, Bound to the Battle God, just because you get a little bit more of the lore in it. In Bound to the Battle God, our human main character Faith accidentally goes through a portal and winds up anchored to Aaron, our battle god, in a realm where gods can be exiled. And during this exile, the god and his anchor must travel through the human realm, completing a series of quests in order to gain access back to the god realm. So both Faith and Aaron want to go home, and both of them are stuck together until they can figure out how. Each book in this series follows a different god and human pairing, so there are multiple men for you to choose from depending on what kind of romances you like. This is a very slow burn romance, and this is also over 600 pages, so I just want to warn you before you get into it if this is one that you're considering getting into. Or if you like boxed chocolates, you might like them for their unpredictability. Maybe you don't even look at the little card with all of the flavorings on it. You just want to enjoy what you get without knowing what you're getting, and so for that vibe, I would recommend The Shape of Water. This is one that I feel like most people will have heard of at some point, but if you haven't already read or watched it, then you don't really know what it's about, and that's the fun of it. To put it vaguely, there is a mute woman working as a janitor at an aerospace research center, and while working there, she accidentally stumbles upon one of the research center's assets, which is an amphibious man that is equal parts terrifying and fascinating, and even though she knows that she should stay away, she can't. This is a fantasy romance, but this is also a historical fiction, and yes, this does have fish sex in it, but it is not graphic, if that is something that has stopped you from picking this up before. Now, Sour Patch Kids. If you're a lover of Sour Patch Kids, you like pain. That's just stating the obvious. Like, yes, this physically hurts to eat, but it's worth it. So I've actually got 3 recommendations for you that I think all fit the this is painful but oh so good vibe, just in slightly different ways. If you want something that just straight up hurts, read this one. This is a queer romance about Wallace, who dies, and Hugo, who owns a tea shop that acts as a sort of limbo. When people die, they are brought to this tea shop, and Hugo helps them sort of come to terms with the fact that they've died and accept it before moving on to the afterlife. But when Wallace is brought to the tea shop, he does not accept his fate. He is unsatisfied with the way that he lived life while he was alive, and so before he can accept his death and move on to the afterlife, he takes it upon himself to sort of live a lifetime in the time that he's given now that he's dead. This is utterly beautiful and heartbreaking and my favorite book of all time. However, because this does have all to do with death, this does have a lot to do with grief as well, and so this is a bit of a heavier book, just in case that's something that you are not interested in. If you are not looking for a heavy kind of hurt, maybe you are looking for more of a enemies to lovers type of hurt, a true enemies to lovers, and I've got you. Death Is My BFF is a paranormal fantasy romance. When Faith was young, she was on the verge of dying, but Death, the Grim Reaper, agreed to spare her for a price. Now that she is 18, Death comes to collect, and Faith suddenly finds herself in the middle of a centuries-long war between heaven and hell, and she has no idea who to trust. Death is a very dark, brooding, and captivating character. Every glimpse of him makes you want to know more, and he really enjoys playing with Faith like a predator to prey. He quite literally calls her cupcake and like feeds on her fear. But maybe that's not quite painful enough for you. Maybe you want an even darker romance. I will suggest the Mindfuck series. The female lead in this was horrifically abused when she was younger and was left for dead, and now 10 years later, I think, she has become a serial killer, and she is making it her mission to hunt down all of the people that abused her in the past and enact her own revenge. And our male lead in this is an FBI agent trying to solve all of these murders. These two meet and fall in love without realizing who the other is, and this whole series is just a wild ride. Lots of trigger warnings though, so please look those up before you dive in. Next up is my personal favorite, Chocolate Covered Strawberries. They're romantic, they're more dramatic than just a bag of candy. You get the tartness of the strawberry and the sweetness of the chocolate, and it's just the best of both worlds. So if these are also your favorite, then I would recommend The Duchess of Steel. Our hero, the Duke of Ashbury, returns home scarred both emotionally and physically after battle and decides it's time to settle down. He needs an heir, but in order to get an heir, he needs a wife. He secures a lowball marriage, but after she sees his scars, it falls through, and so he has to cancel the wedding dress order that he made, and the seamstress who made the wedding dress is enraged, and so she decides to put on the wedding dress and storm into his library and demand an explanation and give him a piece of her mind, and instead he offers her the position of his wife. He reminds me a lot of Dr. House from the House MD TV show. There's a lot of insecurity and vulnerability here that is hidden behind dry wit and quick banter. He's very dramatic in that way, but he wants to protect himself, and so he sort of enacts this set of rules to try and keep like an emotional distance between them, but she returns with a set of her own rules and kind of stands toe-to-toe with him and has no qualms about breaking through his barriers. It's a marriage of convenience, but I think they end up suiting each other really well, and I just always really enjoy the dynamic where one comes from a life of luxury and one comes from a life of hardships, but they are still able to connect. Best of both worlds. In a similar vein, Wild Reverence, Matilda is a god, Vincent is a human. Best of both worlds. This book is truly the definition of yearning, and I mean that with my whole chest. They meet very briefly when they are young, but they come from two completely separate realms, literally, and so a decade goes by before they cross paths again, and the tension is just right there. This is a great read, filled to the brim with drama between all of the gods and goddesses, and a lot more plot focused if you're looking for something with a little bit more depth. If you are looking for something with more depth, more layers, something addicting, then I will assume your favorite candy is Reese's. I could eat 100 of these and still want more. So first, I would recommend the Brutes of Bristlebook trilogy. Each book ranges from 400 to 800 pages, and not a single point in any of those pages did I feel like the story was dragging or that I was wasting my time. Do you know how rare that is? This is a post-apocalyptic wide choose romance with 5 love interests, and they all felt like very real people to me, not just like caricatures or stereotypes of certain personality traits. The first book is mostly focused on characters, all of them meeting and sort of forming a connection and the spice that comes along with that, and less on the plot, but we get much more into the plot in the second and third books. This book also takes its BDSM very seriously. I would also recommend you the Graceling series, and this might be the best fantasy series I've ever read. If you like fantasy romance, but you're tired of every fantasy romance book feeling like the exact same book, then try this series. Every single one in this series is like a breath of fresh air. We've got an actually strong female lead in this named Katza, and she reminds me a lot of Katniss from the Hunger Games. And she is a Graceling, meaning that she has a special power. Her power is to kill, and so she is currently employed as the king's thug, essentially. On a mission gone wrong, she runs into another Graceling who matches her in combat and magical skills, which is something she's never seen before. And after uncovering a conspiracy that could destroy multiple kingdoms, she and this other Graceling team up to get to the bottom of it. Katza is an incredible lead, very raw and real. She's flawed, but you completely understand why, and you really feel like you are walking with her every step of the way as she is forced to confront her flaws and learn to trust people. Her romance with the other Graceling is slow but so well earned and deserved, and she is one of the only representations I've ever seen of a woman who does not want marriage and kids but still gets a happily ever after. I'll recommend the series a million times over. And the last candy on my list, Ferrero Rocher. Fancy little chocolate crunch balls wrapped in gold. It's giving rich. It's giving lush and luxurious, and I'm reaching a bit, but if you like these, then maybe you would like a lush, atmospheric, fulfilling world build, or a rich, dramatic story with a high payoff. For both of those, I am recommending the Crown's Game duology. This is a fantasy romance set in Imperial Russia. Two powerful magicians are forced to compete in a deadly magical duel. The winner will get to be the Tsar's personal enchanter, a very high esteemed position, and the loser will be sentenced to death. This book follows Vika and Nikolai as their powers are tested like they never have been before, and as the stakes rise, so does an unexpected connection between them. Reading the rivalry between them was very intense because their lives are on the line, but it was also so much fun, constantly waiting to see how they would one-up each other and watching their relationship go from strangers to determined adversaries to begrudgingly impressed rivals, and so on. I personally listened to this duology on audiobook and really liked the narration, so I would also recommend that. And my final recommendation, the Bloodfire Saga. This is a 7-book paranormal romance. Mara, our magicless heroine, flees the supernatural world after being dumped and humiliated by the Vampire King until years later, an assassin claims that she has been harboring a secret dormant power and she must be killed before it awakens. And the only person who is strong and scary enough to protect her from this assassin is, of course, the Vampire King. So she's got no choice but to go running back to him for protection, and she expects to get rejected, but instead he agrees on the condition that she stay with him in his safe house. This has enemies to lovers, exes to lovers, forced proximity, like all the good stuff. Old wounds are reopened, unresolved feelings are laid bare, hidden powers are revealed. The story has something major happening at all times. I remember this having tons of twists and turns that I never saw coming, and every single book ends on a cliffhanger. And who's gonna say no to a Vampire King? Crazy people. And that concludes the video. I personally miss watching these kinds of videos, the fun book tags and themed recommendation videos. There are still some circulating the booktube community now, but not nearly as many as there used to be, and so I would like to try and start bringing a little bit of that energy back. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you came up with any recommendations or if you have any that you think would fit better, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. I will be back next week with a brand new reading vlog, and I hope to see you there. Bye!